here to discuss issue going on with Comstock Commons, Councilor Carney, joined by Councilor Hogan and Councilor Majoke. So I guess to get it started, I don't know if it's probably best that we have someone from either DPW or the administration. I know there's been some correspondence back and forth. I'm just trying to sort of wrap my head around the position that the city has taken and, you know, a rationale for it.
Afternoon, councilors. Corey Driscoll Dunham, Chief Operating Officer for the city. So I will share the situation as I understand it, and happy to be corrected if we've gotten anything incorrect. So it's my understanding that the issue was initially brought to the city that the pond that exists in Comstock Commons was, the water was stagnant. There are issues with, cloudiness, it's unattractive, it smells, all that jazz. So what we had done is we had representatives from DPW head out there, and from the reading of the ordinance and from the initial plan that was submitted when Comstock Commons was built, which I believe was in '89, the initial offering plan states that the detention facility, 2 ponds, and the pipe arch will be maintained by the homeowners association, and that the pipe arch will be inspected every 2 years by a professional engineer. It's our understanding that that hasn't taken place, or at least not recently. Again, happy to be corrected if I've gotten anything wrong, but this really, in our mind, is not this is the agreement that was agreed to by the city and the homeowners association when the development was built. And so it's not the city's lack of willingness to help. It's just that we were under the impression that this was the agreement under which we were operating, that the maintenance of that pond, which I believe acts as a retention basin, and the infrastructure leading into it would be maintained by the homeowners association.
So, Corey, so
Yes.
obviously, I've been around a long time, as you well
have.
know. So, I mean, this is the precedence that the city maintains for every development that's been ever put together. If there's an issue with a certain thing that a development wants, the city would have an ordinance like this. And what year was the ordinance? It was like
1989, I believe.
1890.
1989, yes.
Predated me, which is amazing. So that's in, and that, does that homeowners association still exist? It doesn't, does it?
Well, Lincoln Hill.
Bob Petrovich.
Yeah. Good morning.
So, good morning. I'm Bob Petrovich. I am a resident of Comstock Commons. I live at 2 Daybreak Lane, along with a number of the other residents that are here this morning from Comstock Commons. It's my understanding that when Steve Buechner originally created Lincoln Hill, which was a development company that developed the project down there, which became Comstock Commons. There was an agreement between the city and Lincoln Hill relative to the stormwater retention basin in terms of its O&M, and we don't dispute that. Subsequent to Lincoln Hill, Comstock Commons, I believe, is the successor interest in this arrangement, and as such, is not disputing the ordinance or its existence. I think that one of the things that we want to make sure that is understood today is that with respect to the retention basin and anything that needs to be fixed, repaired, maintained, the HOA is fully on board with doing that. Whether the culvert collapses, whether the stones come loose, whether the liner within the bottom of the pond needs to be fixed, the HOA is fully on board with shouldering those responsibilities, and that's not in dispute. The issue really here is, it's not the color of the water, it's not the clarity of the water, it's what we're receiving in that retention basin from an upgradient source that is coming in with large storm events and can't be captured except as a settling basin and a filtration basin. This pond has become for the ultimate discharge of the water that goes down out under Manley Fieldhouse and ultimately into the Limestone Meadowbrook Creek. So our issue is, how can we be responsible for and prevent things that are coming into this retention basin from upgradient sources that are providing all of this sediment, which is taking up the volume of the pond, making then in storm events the water rise and putting into jeopardy potentially, we haven't had an event yet, but we're getting close because of the reduced volume capacity of the pond for water, of having foundations and basements flooded and impacted by this. So we fully recognize that the pond is our responsibility, but what we can't control is what's coming into the pond from other stormwater sources within the city, and as a result, we're getting the sediment, the debris, and the infiltration that we need to get scooped out of there. I think our approach is two-pronged, and our request is two-pronged. Some immediate relief with respect to equipment that can come in and remove the sediment and the debris that's in the pond, and then a more fulsome and holistic approach to how can we prevent this from occurring in the future on as frequent a basis as it is now. We recognize, obviously, that you can only put a certain amount of screening in to trap sediment, but let water still flow through, but at the same time, it can't be so fine that it immediately gets plugged and creates problems in other locations. So the short answer to this is we'd like help with getting the pond cleaned up right now with sediment removal, and then talk about what can we do to, instead of doing this, having this conversation again in a decade or a decade and a half, maybe we have this conversation in 2 or 2.5 decades, because I think it's always going to be an issue, but it's something that I think in partnership with the city, the HOA would like to work in partnership with the city collaboratively to figure out how to solve the immediate problem, and then the larger holistic approach to a more fulsome solution down the road. So with that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could, I just, I know we've done, studies previously, that we are continuing to do studies on Meadowbrook and all of that. Have we looked at this? I understand that our position is that based on the agreement that we had from '89, which, was before I was born.
Brutal.
That technically that our view is, or the city's view is that, okay, it's not our responsibility. The agreement is that this HOA or Lincoln Hill was going to be responsible for that. But have we looked at how this affects, have we looked at big picture? Has this been included in those studies and looks? Because this is something that I think would be, of concern to the city, with,
Sure.
in our sewers.
So I think, and I reserve the right to defer to the experts in the back of the room, sure. But I think we acknowledge that the retention basin likely needs to be dredged, that there's an amount of sediment in there that needs to be dredged. But we would also assert that that's part of the maintenance, is dredging. We're facing this with our own, some of our own infrastructure, Cold Brook Creek and Furnace Brook Creek and all those areas that are facing the same type of surges. Over time, sediment builds up, and so eventually needs to be dredged. And so that's something that we're looking into. It's also not something that we do internally. We don't dredge. We're going to have to contract out dredging those brooks. We would have to contract out, dredging a pond. So we would maintain that with all due respect, that the sediment that has built up there is part of maintaining this retention basin, and it's not a service that the city provides right now. We're going to have to contract it out when we do it ourselves, when we dredge some of these brooks that just over time the sediment builds up and the capacity for water becomes less and less, and then you have overflow. And so we're looking at this for our own city-owned infrastructure, and so I think that's the stance that we're taking at the moment. And there are other, to your question, there are, just off the top of our head, Newberry Commons, Xavier Woods, townhomes at Velasco and Glenwood, other privately owned, similar situations that are maintained by the owners of those properties and not by the city.
And supported by an ordinance?
I believe so, yeah.
Mary?
So
Supported by an ordinance.
So Mary, there's been ordinances passed before, and we've never helped these folks out before then? Any kind of these other private developments that have come on board the city, and to your knowledge?
The recent ones, Newberry Commons and Xavier Woods, were via the stormwater agreements that are now required to be in place. Back in the 1980s, the formal stormwater requirements with DEC were not required. But so it's either in place via a stormwater agreement, but it's also in place on Newberry Commons and Xavier Woods, in that we only took ownership for the sanitary sewer and the water main, similar to what is in place here at Comstock Commons.
So if a situation arose on any of those, that's our policy, that we don't,
Yes.
even though it's a city neighborhood, we don't get involved
Correct.
in like
It's a
managing
private
a
development.
process like this.
Yep, it's a private development.
Okay, good. So when we do these projects, when we get these agreements, when we allow these types of developments during that process, you know, there's obviously an extended process of going through and looking at everything and giving, you know, meetings an opportunity to speak. Do we take into consideration the effect that it's going to have on the neighboring area, or what extent do we go to allow neighbors to know about the development? I mean, that would be sort of my concern, is that, you know, with Xavier Woods, I mean, this is something that obviously had to have some effect on this, you know, neighborhood and the development of that, and were the homeowners association, were they notified of that development? And, you know, I mean, that's, how do we let people know? Like, this clearly had an effect on their lake or their pond.
So
or whatever.
what, the development of Xavier Woods?
Yeah.
So I don't know that we are in full agreement that the development of Xavier Woods
Okay.
has a correlation to what's happening here at Comstock Commons. And I agree that, you know, property owners are not going to be experts in, you know, water retention and basins, but I think that's why, built into the initial offering plan, there is the agreement that it would be inspected every 2 years by a professional engineer, so that, you know, over time, they would bring in somebody whose expertise this is, so that we could try to identify these issues before they become so far down the road that obviously it's a more expensive fix at this point. But it's included in the offering plan that the property owners would bring a professional engineer every 2 years to assess the status, to see if there are incremental changes that could be made, instead of, you know, what is certainly going to be a larger project at this point.
So, you know, as somebody that, so the last time the city went there, I went there with
Yes.
the, you know, you remember that. And when I went there, as a representative, I think Corey, there has to be a time where we say, okay, this is a private responsibility, but when it become a health issue, as when I went there, the water was just standing there, it wasn't moving. And as a city, I understand that we have an ordinance that say that it's the homeowners association responsibility to drench that and do what they need to do. But I think as a city, there is a need for immediate action there, in which we can look at the ordinance later, but at the moment, there is a need to act, because the water standing still, that could be a health hazardous. There gotta be something to be done there.
So I think I can, not that we want to go down this road, but I can almost guarantee that if the city were to, you know, site the property, bring in a contractor to fix this problem for the Property Owners Association, it's going to be more expensive, because we need to pay prevailing wage. There are compliance constraints that we have in our contracting that private property owners do not have. And so I guarantee that it would be a more expensive fix, because we're going to have to contract it out. This isn't like a driveway apron or a sewer that we can easily clear, that's something that we do, you know, and you know, sometimes obviously the line gets blurred of who's responsible for what, and we're happy to provide those services when it's something that we can do. Like I said, you know, we repair driveway aprons. We sometimes clear sewers when it's, you know, we believe it's a property owner's responsibility, but there's an immediate health issue or something along that nature. But we would have to contract this service out. It's going to be more expensive and then we'd have to pass that cost on to the property owners. And I am very confident that it's going to be more expensive for us to do it than it would be for them to procure a contract privately.
And I think, you know, when I was there, and I don't know if Is Dr. Silver here? He's not, okay. So when I went there and met there, one of the things that was clearly stated to me was that the homeowners were willing to pay for it. Because I think at this moment, the idea whether it is a need or whether something should be done about it, that's out of the question. Because something do need to be done about it, right? The debate around that is over, because when I went there, the water standing still, literally the water was turning green. That's a problem. I understand that there are live animals within that.
Correct.
That's a health problem, bigger health problem later. With the understanding that the homeowners association is willing to pay for it, the city has the tools to do it. I think the conversation become to the homeowners association that, okay, we can do it, but here's the cost. Are you willing to go with this number? I think that's where the conversation.
If they're looking for a more expensive option, we can certainly present them with a more expensive option than I think what they're going to be able to get as private property owners. Like I said, we need to pay prevailing wages. We have MWBE compliance standards that raise the cost of things, which obviously we're willing to do, because if it's taxpayers' money, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that provides opportunity to folks, but it's going to be a more expensive option. Like I said, we have the tools in the sense that we can procure a contract, which, the homeowners could also procure a contract, but this isn't something that we can just get the sewer department to navigate their equipment down there and clear the retention basin. That's not a service we provide. I don't believe that we have the equipment that would fit in there, but it's just not something that again, this isn't paving a street or replacing a sidewalk or, something that is part of the normal course of business for the city. It's just not. Dredging a retention basin is just not something that we currently do. We contract it out ourselves.
And I think, Corey, that's more of a reason as to why we should get involved, because as a city, if we don't even believe ourselves, we don't have the tool to do it. I don't expect the homeowners association to even have that. And as a city, I think we have an obligation here to do something. Okay. We do. I'm all set, Councilor.
Okay. Bob, would you like to
Oh, sure.
just?
Thank you. We appreciate your support and your enthusiastic support with regard to this issue. The Homeowners Association, I can't attest to the fact that the Homeowners Association every 2 years has had the pond inspected, but we have had the pond inspected periodically to make sure that the culvert and the bridge running through and over the pond, the retention basin, we use the pond's misnomer, is, as far as we know it, is in compliance. The HOA is, let's put the issue of cost aside, because we can probably negotiate that solution. What we're really interested in is an engineer inspecting this. This is a problem that in aggregate accumulates over time, and so this has been going on now for a long time. We're receiving this retention basin is receiving silt and sediment and debris from city streets. It's not falling out of the sky onto the ground and into the pond. It's coming from city streets that are up gradient from where we are, and our retention basin is actually being a sediment filter and holding back this debris from going into the Meadowbrook Creek Basin. I think we're open to the conversation. I'm speaking just for myself. I think I'm open to the conversation about cost sharing as part of the solution. But I also would like to impress upon you common councilors that we're receiving debris. It's analogous to us getting fined or having to solve a problem where somebody drives by your front yard and throws a bag of garbage on your front yard, and you're getting fined for that. But you didn't put the garbage there. You go and you clean it up and you get rid of it, and yet again, another bag of garbage the next week is on your front lawn. We can't control what comes into this retention basin from up gradient sources. So one of the solutions is to dredge it out now and then figure out what can we do to not deal with this problem on such a frequent basis in the future. And I would let any of my other homeowners in the HOA speak if they would like.
Pardon me for just 1 second. Can I ask you a question, sir? Yeah, I'm just wondering, you mentioned the source of the sediment, and I'm just curious to know, has there been a professional assessment that indicates that it is in fact sediment coming from city streets, or is this just, your lay opinion?
Well, it's my lay opinion, but it's a stormwater event that occurs, and all of this water flows from city streets into this retention basin. It doesn't come from, I mean, if you're there for a storm event, you'll appreciate that it all filters in from various locations up and through the outer Comstock area.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Can we just have, I'll give people the opportunity to speak, but I'd just like you to sign up and get a list going, I guess, with Jim back there in the corner, just so that it's, a little bit more organized, so we're going in order. Yeah. So I know, if you'd like to speak, yeah.
Anyhow, the only thing I really want to say is that really, we...
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, Richard Lee, I'm at 29 Nursery Lane. Okay. The thing of it is, when they had mentioned Xavier Woods, the thing of it is we actually made complaints against Xavier Woods back in 2013, and I actually have the documentation showing that. In the code enforcement, and we also had the city engineering there, where they did not uphold to the standards that they needed to, and I have pictures and everything where they've actually showed that the silt coming in from there is going into the drains and is flowing down into the drainage system. So, I mean, for them to say that they're not responsible, I mean, and who enforces that? Does the city enforce that in other areas?
Yeah.
And the same thing, I brought it up when you were there on the bridge. I brought it up to DPW that they were doing work up on Jamesville Ave, which is right 2 blocks from where we are, and that was the county. They're doing road work there, and they had no barriers up. Everything that was coming in was flowing in when it rains into the drain water. And what happens when it goes into the drains, it comes down in dust, because we're the only place that it flows through. And we have a multi-culvert there that comes from Vincent Street and it comes from Comstock. So we have it from 2 different areas coming in there, and that's the only water source we have.
Okay, now, you said that you notified the city of this concern in 2013?
Yes, actually, we did, and I have that here.
Okay.
And they actually said that, I have the name of the people and everything else, that it was Russell Hauk from City Engineering Department, and they said that they were not in compliance with it.
Okay. Is there, do we have, is there someone from the city side that can speak to that? If they were put on note, I mean, I guess I'm a little, we were notified of the concern and they acknowledged that they weren't in compliance, then what was done?
I'd have to check my records, but there isn't, they were required to have a stormwater agreement, and they are required to meet the requirements, and to our knowledge, I believe they've been met. I'd have to look at my records from 2013. I'm not sure when Xavier Woods was built, but I believe it was after 2013, but let me check my records.
All right, if you could look into that and get back to us and let us know what comes of that, I would appreciate it if there's something that, we have
But
on record.
I would like to say that after the pond was built, we don't have any record documentation, but we do have a staff member that met out there with the original developer, Steve Buechner, and Mr. Buechner wanted to install a sediment control facility to catch the sediment for the pond, and they did install it, and we're responsible for maintaining it, and that's an existing 4-step sediment control structure to collect the sediment. So that's something they're responsible for maintaining. It's a portion of the pond.
Okay. Do you have a comment on that?
Thank you. We do have a sediment control mechanism at the head of the pond that is a series of boxes that will catch fines that come in. The issue is when we have a large to extra large storm event, all of that just gets, it's gravity, it's physics, it's the volume of water coming through there is so robust that it completely overrides what we've installed and then settles out through the various swirling actions within the pond and winds up sitting there on a small on a steady, small rain event, it's not a problem. It catches sediment. On a large event, it completely overflows it. If you're there, we have videos, if you're there for a large event, you can see that it's a geyser coming through there.
Corey, coming up.
I mean, just to refer back to the initial offering plan, it states the ponds provide storage for increased rate of runoff and silt sediment. So, so silt going in there and runoff is what it's there for. Understandably, the capacity is limited because of the sediment that's built up over time. And again, that's an issue that we're facing in our facilities as well, that over time sediment builds up and eventually needs to be dredged. It's just part of the maintenance of these types of facilities. And as I said, we just had a meeting Friday, I think, about looking into the cost of dredging some of these creeks and brooks that serve a lot of the same purpose, because over time, that's just what the maintenance requires.
Okay. So Corey, what's the process for addressing those issues when we know that it's a property that the city is specifically responsible for maintaining? What do we do in that instance?
So, I mean, we put out a bid and we find a contractor who's willing to dredge those areas for us. So, and for Furnace Brook, that's all within Elmwood Park mostly, and so that's going to be easy for us to do because we own everything around it. Cold Brook Creek obviously is a major issue for people in the valley because the sediment has built over time. There are some areas where there's incidences where it's runoff, and that's causing issues for the property owners, and that's infrastructure that we own. And so we are looking into putting together a bid to the cost to dredge that, because that's something that is our infrastructure that's impacting property owners. I think we're going to be looking pretty soon at having to dredge Onondaga Creek, and that's going to be a much bigger expense for us, but it needs to be done because that's part of the maintenance of these facilities over time.
Is this something that needs to happen regularly? Is there like a maintenance plan, so to speak, for maintaining the sediment levels?
I think certainly, the last time I believe it was done was maybe 7 years ago for Furnace or Cold Brook, both? 7 years ago. So, that's, I'm sure we would love to be able to do it more regularly. And I think these conversations that we've been having on Friday, we talked about, whether or not we should incorporate this into, whether it's a capital plan or something that on a regular basis, we're making sure to dredge these things because we don't want to get to the level like it is with Cold Brook, which is impacting property owners in the valley.
Right. And is it, the expectation of the engineers or whoever's, in charge of planning this maintenance?
Yes.
Do they plan in advance for, extraordinary events? Because it seems like to me from listening from what everybody's saying here is that there is some sort of expectation or plan for normal sized rain or whatever. I guess it's a decent way of putting that. But what do they do in the event of, extra special events? Or is that something that's even reasonable to think that, that you could predict in the future?
Yeah. I'll see if Mary's going to kick me if I say anything, but I know that we also have sensors that are monitoring the creek so that we can try to assess what the levels are at. And, obviously this year in particular has been extraordinary in terms of our rain events. But I think it's just brought to our attention the need to more regularly maintain these areas. And so that's what we're planning to do.
Got it. Understood. Thank you.
So the contention of the city is the Xavier Woods, the planning phase of Xavier Woods. I know that's extensive when it has to go before the planning commission and all that, and all our city departments have to act on it. Mm-hmm. So did that come up during the planning for Xavier Woods? I wonder if Mary remembers.
Yeah,
that.
I know Xavier Woods has like a lot of large developments, a stormwater.
It could have to be a negative secret, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, they have a full stormwater management plan in place, which included the construction and then the ongoing maintenance, which
So the
they are
contention of this,
responsible for.
so
But-
the contention of the city, Mary, is that Xavier Woods has nothing to do with this issue.
I don't believe so. It is true that there is sediment coming into the pond, there was sediment coming into the pond from the get-go, and that's why they installed this sediment control facility, which needs to be maintained.
Was there a maintenance plan submitted to the city?
Not for Comstock Commons. That was before the day before the time period where we require stormwater maintenance plans.
So we put an ordinance together without any way of like checking to see if that, there
The
was a
ordinance was
plan.
put together stating that, you know, they were responsible for the construction and maintenance of the pond.
But we had no check on it at all, to see if they were actually doing it or not.
I don't know if we did or not. Believe it or not, it's
Assumption
before
would
my
be
time here.
Before we, did any of that.
Private development, so we wouldn't have any.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is that, you know, I got a packet actually here, so you can see the backup for the Xavier Woods thing. You know, plus, when the city does do procurement for actually getting contractors, don't they take the lowest bid anyhow? I mean, we're not really looking for a handout. We're looking for a hand in having the city help us. I mean, nobody here said that we were asking the city to completely do it, but we are asking for a hand, you know, in helping us with. The city actually told us about a place that actually we could reach out to. We've reached out to 3 or 4 places, and none of them have the equipment or the capability to do this. They actually suggested an Alco, it's company name called Alco. We reached out to them. They no longer have the facilities to do that. And that's why we started reaching out to the city more and more, because, but like, we have no, and we talked to DPW, they have the capability of doing this. They were on the bridge with us when we were talking about it, and they said they had that. So we were thinking, well, why can't, you know, the city's gonna reach out for bids, so wouldn't they take the lowest bid when they reach out for bids, so that maybe it would be a little bit more competitive, so that it would be affordable for everybody to share in it? We're not asking for a freebie here. You know, and I wanted to give everybody a packet here that actually shows about Xavier Woods, the backup for it. Even today, they're doing construction there now, and there's nobody there monitoring any of this stuff. So, and we have pictures of that. So, I mean, it does affect us regardless. When that water comes through, we did do what we had to do. We maintained the culvert like we were supposed to. We did the silt traps, and we did all of that. We're doing that, but now that we're getting more storms, we're getting more sediment through, I mean, it's not really something we can control. Like Bob said, you know, you can, how much can you take and you throw it in there? I mean, we do, you know, we're trying to do what we can. We actually do a lot of, I have a whole plan of what we do there right now to maintain, like with the ordinance. You know, we put muck away in there, we do all the chemical treatments, we do all of this stuff. We walk around and we actually take soda bottles out of there, we take, you know, garbage that comes in off the street, we take paper bags, plastic bags out of there. We do this ourselves, and we are doing that. We're expecting to do that. We don't have a problem doing that. We're talking about the excessive nature of what we have there today. So I just wanted to at least give you a packet of what we
Yeah,
have.
any information they have, I'm sure myself and the fellow councilors would appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Patrick Haber. I'm a resident in Comstock Commons. I think one of the issues that we have to look at is when this system was set up for the collecting the silt that was built for Comstock Commons, as well as the agreement was made long before Xavier Woods was developed. That area was not a runoff. Now all of the streets and houses there run into the system that end up in Comstock Commons. So all of that, to say that doesn't have an effect on what is coming into us and to our community is not accurate, because all of that runoff, which used to just sit in that undeveloped land, is now heading our way and going through the system that ultimately ends up in Meadowbrook. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucia Wisnand. I live at 11 Nursery Lane, and I have the peculiar honor, perhaps, of knowing something about Meadowbrook drainage system for 80 years. First of all, my grandfather owned the Comstock farm, which is part of this whole area. And as a little girl, I used to be told about the property where Comstock Commons now is, and that he lost it in the 20s, et cetera, but it was a marshy area. And then I lived in DeWitt, right close to St. Mary's Cemetery, where Meadowbrook used to come through and flood our yard with 12 feet of water on regularity. We even found boats in the yard occasionally. Point being that where Xavier Woods are the springs that Meadowbrook springs from. And when they built there, I was amazed, because essentially it was kind of a swampy area. and that is where Meadowbrook originates. And so when they built there, they clearly muddied up Meadowbrook in a way that comes right through our ponds that were built before Xavier Woods by many years. And so Xavier Woods does create a problem. And there's a whole drainage system of Meadowbrook that I think they did the work on Meadowbrook Drive and whatnot sometime perhaps in the 60s or 70s. Nobody seems to find it. But Meadowbrook has been a problem for the city and the county for 80 years that I know of.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Terry, and I live at 17 Nursery Lane. There have been a lot of recommendations from both the city and others as to what we should do to look into the problem and what can be done. And as Dick said, we've had quite a few contractors in. I'm on the committee, so we walk around with them. Quite a few contractors in. They have looked at it. Even the Elko who did it before, what was it, like 2001 or 2002? And they said there was no way they could do that now, the way it was, that they didn't have the equipment to do the silt. And every recommendation that we have had from them, they've indicated to us, and I have no proof of this, but they've indicated to us that there's something that the city has that is about the only vehicle, or it's got a big thing, suction thing on it, stuff like that. It is about the only thing that they can see that could do the process. Because the other thing they're concerned about is that if they came in, like, all they have are like the scoop things, that they're then going to possibly go through the liner and damage that, and they would not take the risk to do that. We also had another company from Canandaigua come in. They did testing of the water. They said things were, as far as the level of the water, whatever chemicals, because Michelle does a lot of that they were all in very good condition. We also had a recommendation from the city to put in fountains. We do have 2 fountains, and we've had to take them out because, especially on the side near Mr. Petrovich's, the silt has built up so that it bottoms out and it won't even run. And that is also, now the things coming through on the other side, we're starting to run into that. They keep mucking up. We have to keep taking them out, cleaning them, etc. So a lot of the I just wanted to say that a lot of the recommendations that have come to us, we have looked into those, and we have had these companies come in, and they say that they cannot help us, and so we are looking to the city for some type of help in doing this. Are we asking freebie? No, but it's been indicated that the city has equipment that can suck it out without damaging the liner. Again, I'll hearsay, I have that, do not have that in paperwork.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that we do not, but if there's someone from engineering DPW that can speak, do we have this equipment it's my understanding that we have to sub out for work like this as well, but.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Kohansky, Superintendent of Sewers. We have what's called a vac truck,
Okay.
which we maintain our sewer mains, but for this kind of capacity, it's not what it's built for.
Okay.
That's why when Corey's saying that the dredging projects are going on to Furnace Brook and all that, we have to contract out because we don't have the capability of doing that work.
Okay.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
this project will come down, you gotta get the permits, DEC will have to get involved, and all that aspect of it that, what they're trying to do through Furnace Brook now is get all that stuff through DEC, and it's a process.
And I understand that, and I guess my concern and why I wanted to have this committee meeting is, I understand that there's a lot to it. I mean, I know it's not as simple as, I know when the auditor who's now gone, but when he was a counselor, we put in additional funds to do sewer cleanings with the equipment you're talking about in Sedgwick and Eastwood to address a lot of the backup and problems that we're having. It's my understanding that the equipment that we have on hand doesn't do what we're looking for in this project, but to have homeowners associations or neighborhood associations do this type of work where we're contracting out and getting permits and things from the DEC, and to go to that extent, that's my concern, and that we're setting a precedent that these neighborhood groups are going to be doing this, and are they really going to be doing the proper work? And I understand that it is more expensive, and it is. To go through and to say we're going to prevailing wage, all these other things, it will be more expensive. But I don't know that as a chair for DPW for the next, month, we're setting a precedent that we're gonna have neighborhood associations dealing with this. I would feel more comfortable in my own personal view, and this is my own view of, government and this, is that we're supposed to be locally as a municipality, we're like the middleman between state and federal government, and that when constituents have an issue, that we're connecting them with the proper channels and the proper work to get things done. And that would be, and again, I understand and I'm sympathetic to the neighborhood that, they've gone out, they've asked, and that there's more of a process than just simply, saying, hey, we're gonna go get, somebody from, in the university area, there's a company that's gonna come and, snake the drain and do whatever. That's not what's occurring here. There's multiple levels of it. And that's what my concern and my issue is I don't want neighborhood associations doing this, because God knows if they're gonna do it right. No offense to all of you folks. But that we're supposed to be stepping in and saying, okay, we'll get the permits, we'll do whatever. And then if need be, assess a fee onto.
So, I mean,
Hold on, Corey, if I just want to quickly respond to that, Councilor Carney, because as much as I'm in favor of direct government interventions, I mean, I truly, really am.
Yeah.
But from everything I'm hearing here, this really sounds like a problem between two private entities, right? And the issues that they might be having might have to do with the people who did the construction, with the different developers, but I'm not exactly hearing how it is the city's direct responsibility to assist with this private problem. Right now, yes, applying for assistance, I think that's something different. Yes, maybe the city can come in, contribute, the city can help put them in touch with the right people, but ultimately, I think their issues lies with other folks, not necessarily with us directly as the municipality itself.
I couldn't disagree with you more, Councilor White. This is, to me, maybe I have a different view of government than
well,
you do, but I don't understand why the city, not to debate it, Councilor White, but I think the city should manage this situation. I think we should do it. This is a city neighborhood. And I've been around long enough to know, no matter what happens in the city, it comes back to rest on the city's door. And to me, we're like Pontius Pilate here.
Well,
we're washing our hands of a neighborhood.
Well, when there's an agreement that clearly states who's responsible for maintaining it, nobody said maintaining retention basins is easy. It's not, it's not inexpensive. And, while I understand that we certainly don't want neighbors having to navigate that, we're happy to help if, on calls with DEC or guidance on, any expertise we can lend. I mean, in the same way that you don't go to, replace an electrical outlet yourself because you don't know what you're doing. You hire a licensed electrician. And so I think per the initial agreement, you hire an engineer to oversee the project who, you're going to need a PE in order to pull the permits from DEC anyway. So I don't want to say we're completely washing our hands, we walk away. We're happy to provide information, we're happy to provide guidance, but there is an agreement in place that does say that the responsibility of maintaining this is on the private property owners. I mean, and so we're just adhering to the agreement as established. We're not, best of luck and see you later. We're happy to help out, but having us suddenly take responsibility for this when it clearly agreement says that it is on the private property owners, I think is, we're adhering to the agreement in place.
I guess my question, Councilor, would become if this was a city-owned property, Corey, what would we do considering the problem we have at hand?
The same thing we're doing with Cold Brook Creek and we're doing with Furnace Brook is we're contracting out for a private contractor to come in and dredge the areas that need to be dredged because of built-up sediment. So we're not unsympathetic to the problem. We're facing it with our own city-owned public infrastructure. It's just that per the agreement that is in place, the maintenance of this retention basin is on the private property owners.
And have we given them access to the same information that we have access to dredge out our own?
I mean, we're just starting that conversation now. We just, like I said, we just had a meeting on Friday about it. I mean, we did provide, we had reached out to DEC to ask what would be the next steps for these property owners. We provided that contact information to say, DEC should likely be your next step. If, like I said, we're happy to provide guidance. We're happy to provide information, anything that we can. It's just, the agreement states that the maintenance of this retention basin, including whatever might come of that, it's on private property and maintained by the property owners.
And what really, something I can't wrap around, my mind around it, Corey, is the fact that we have our constituent that clearly understand their responsibility, but they are fleeing out to us for help. Mm-hmm. And that to me, I can't just, it's something I cannot turn around and say, you know what, here's information, go figure it out. Especially when they have tried everything in their power to try to fix this problem, and they can't. Mm-hmm. I think as an entity, we gotta do more than that. We gotta do more than just say, here's the information, go figure it out. I think there gotta be more. There got to be more.
Like I said, it's, we take down trees, but we don't take down private trees. We clear sewers, but there's a point where it becomes the property owner's responsibility. So again, not trying to be difficult here, but per the agreement, the maintenance is on the private property owners. We're able to provide what guidance we can, but it really does seem that perhaps, that the city coming in it's going to open up, I'm not going to make the slippery slope argument because I don't like slippery slope arguments, but we're adhering to the agreement. Like I said, we're able to lend what expertise we can, any guidance, any information, but ultimately the responsibility here is per the agreement on the property owners. And that's a challenge that we face, Jeff, I'm sure Jeff can tell you probably several times a day he has conversations with property owners about what part of the sewer infrastructure is our responsibility and what part of the sewer infrastructure is the private owner's responsibility. They need to go get a plumber. They need to figure it out. We lend help where we can. We might go a little bit past what is technically our responsibility to help out the property owner, but at the same time, it's clear what the property owner is responsible for.
Go on, why don't you tell?
How are you? We keep getting people referencing.
Thank you.
On camera. We keep getting everyone referencing whatever this document is, which we've been told exists. We have asked in different ways to get a copy of this and have never been able to get a copy of whatever this agreement is. So can I request a copy of this agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually on the Comstock Commons website.
The entire agreement?
It's 118 pages, I think, so I was going to print it out.
Talking about the ordinance.
The ordinance.
Oh, the ordinance? Sure. Yep, I got copies of it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just for a point of clarification, if I may, and I beg your indulgence, and I certainly don't want to monopolize the rest of your day. I understand you're busy. First of all, we may have neglected to do this when we got started. We thank you all sincerely for your time and your attention and listening to us and hearing what we have to say. And if I neglected to mention that at the beginning of these remarks, let me please do so now. It's very much appreciated not only by myself but my neighbors, and we very much are glad that you're giving us this chance to have this conversation with you all. So thank you. Let me just provide one point of clarification, if I may. Certainly, Xavier Woods is part of the conversation, but it's not the entire conversation. There are numerous streets out in Outer Comstock. I don't have a specific map, nor have I done a dye test or a tracer test to figure out what the drainage is coming into Comstock Commons, but I can assure you that it comes from Vincent, it comes from Comstock, it comes from all of these streets up and behind us, which their names are escaping me now. Woodridge, all of these streets that are up gradient of us, all of the stormwater comes in to this drainage feature and out into Meadowbrook. And so, yes, Xavier Woods is a contributor, but it's only part of the conversation or story, not the entire story in terms of what comes into the pond. And again, we recognize that we should be maintaining our pond, but what we are asking you to consider is how can we maintain something when these storm events are so overwhelming that whatever controls that we put in place are bypassed by the storm events that are coming in, and we just can't control it. And so over time, we get the sediment buildup that becomes of such a large magnitude that we don't know how to handle it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions on this? No? Okay.
Given the subsequent conditions that have occurred since the ordinance was passed, is there a way to amend the ordinance?
I think that's part of a larger conversation, and, you know, I'd like a little bit more information from engineering about, you know, I apologize, is the comments that you made about, about 2013, in this packet, you've got this in here? Okay, and I'd like to get with engineering to see what we have, you know, that, what correlates with it. I think this is probably, you know.
Plus, as far as the ordinance goes, we do have a maintenance schedule that we do.
Okay.
And we feel that this is above and beyond regular maintenance because of the events. We have a multi-culvert there, which, and like we said, there's been a lot of road work being done, because we're retired, we actually see what's going on. There's a lot of road work that's being done, even below South Campus, it's along in the Goodrich area, and the, you know, DPW's there all the time, and they're doing things, and, you know, as that comes through, the storms come through, I don't think they have any maintenance, anything that's blocking any of that stuff, so it actually cuts down on the Silton's traps coming in the city streets. I don't believe that they have what they need there in order to block that. And I think we've talked to DPW, and there is things that they can put on the outside of the private property to actually, you know, make it so that it's less coming in, but I don't think they have done that. And, you know, so they're not doing their part either. So, I mean, that's why we're asking for help, because this is coming from all areas. I know we have focused, like Bob said, on Xavier Woods, but that's only because it's an obvious place. It's easy for us to focus on. But we could focus just as much on Jamesville Ave, where the county came in and did road work, and nobody monitored the DEC didn't go in and say, or the city didn't say, what have you got to block any of the stuff coming into the drains. We could say that to any place that goes on there. We could be taking pictures every day if we wanted to. But there's no sense. I mean, we should be able to work with the city to actually get a solution to this.
Okay. All right, thank you. Questions?
No, I just would urge the administration to, like, let's talk with these folks and see what kind of things we can offer currently. My position is clear. I think we should manage the situation, and we should do what we can to rectify the issue. You know, I mean, all us counselors, you know, recently have seen a lot of money pass through the Common Council from the American Rescue Plan. And a lot of times neighborhood associations have made requests to improve their neighborhoods. And we've been piling, I have a $250,000 request and one for a park, and it was submitted to us without any kind of plans at all, and I, of course, stopped it. But I mean, I
For
think we
certain
have to-
parks, not for other parks, but for certain parks.
For
yeah.
certain parks,
Yes.
exactly.
Eastwood
And certain
went through.
And let's face it, certain neighborhoods too.
Right. Certain
you know?
neighborhoods got held and
Right.
others can go
So,
forward.
I mean, I see a little, I have a trouble understanding where's a neighborhood that pays a significant amount of taxes, a neighborhood that's been up there for many years, and we can't alleviate their situation, we can't take on and manage their situation. I agree with Councilor Carney. I don't see anybody here, no offense, that can manage it like the city can. You know, I think we should manage it and we should pay for it.
Yeah, we could manage remodeling somebody's kitchen. I mean, like, there's a certain level
Not
of
my
responsibility in a private property owner. And again, we're not trying to be unhelpful. We're trying to adhere to the agreement that says they will maintain the retention basin. Retention basins need regular maintenance. They are eventually going to have to be dredged. And it's our contention that this has just reached the level, as it has in other city infrastructure, to the level where it needs to be dredged. And again, we're happy to help to try and, you know, listening to Carol's comments that they've tried a bunch of different, you know, options and no one is willing to help them. I'd be happy to have us help navigate that process with them, but I think there's a difference between offering our expertise and trying to assist them in problem solving and taking over the entire problem ourselves and assuming responsibility for it in perpetuity.
So somebody from the city asked, you know, suggested they should get a DEA permit?
It will.
DC, I'm sorry.
A professional engineer is the one that would have to. It's
So
just
they hire a professional engineer?
Just as if you hire an electrician, they're going to have to pull a permit from the city. I mean, so you get a professional engineer. They reach out to DEC. They oversee the project. You know, again, I'm not trying to minimize the amount of work that this will take, and understandably that homeowners, this is not the world that most folks live in terms of pulling permits. We're happy to assist in that process and to help them and partner with them to navigate it. But again, I think there's a difference between partnering with them to try and help see this through and just wholesale taking over all responsibility for it, which I don't know if that's entirely what the homeowners are asking for. I think they're looking for us to provide additional assistance, and I think we should have a conversation about what other assistance we can provide without taking it over entirely ourselves.
So one thing I heard, in listening to everybody's comments, maybe there might not be anything that we can do about this necessarily going back. I really do think that might be an issue between the private homeowners, but maybe we could look at something like an ordinance to help that requires new construction in the city to provide runoff control, right? I don't know if that's a current requirement, but maybe that's something that we can do to actually at least keep the problem from getting worse and preventing the problem from happening to some extent in the future.
Yeah, I mean, almost any runoff system is going to require maintenance at some point, whether it's regular maintenance or to the point where, like I said, with the creeks now, we're going to have to really dredge them because we haven't been in a position to provide incremental changes in the amount of time there. But, again, we're happy to partner. Like I said, I just think there's a line between partnering and wholesale taking over the entire issue ourselves.
Well, could we look at that line then? Could we meet with these?
It's okay with me, yeah.
For now.
I think we need to have an actual, have a meeting, sit down and figure out what, I guess at this point, what we'll say the administration, because I think the council has maybe a different view of what the line would be, but what the administration is comfortable, where that line is with the administration, what you're comfortable with doing and what part of it. Yeah.
And again, I would offer this in response to Ms. Driscoll. We're not asking for the city to take over the responsibility or to change the ordinance. What we're asking for is help as a result of numerous events that we can't manage, that have occurred over time, that have overloaded the pond. Regular maintenance, we do. This is the result of extraordinary events that have occurred that have deposited so much material into the pond that it's overwhelming. And so we're not looking to change the ordinance. We're not looking to foist the responsibility onto the city in perpetuity. I think that's incorrect. What we are asking for is how can we work with the city to get somebody there to remove this material and solve the problem. And I think the HOA is in a position and willing to fund this, and whether it's put on our tax bill or whether it's a one-time payment, and we assess ourselves as an HOA for it, we're willing to do that. But it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good now, for now. Are you good, Councilman? Good. I'm good. Councilor White?
No.
Okay, I would just ask engineering, as soon as you have that information on the 2013 issue with Xavier Woods, I would appreciate it. I'm sure probably the other counselors, if we could get that sent over to us. And Corey, I think we need to get back together with the homeowners association again and have a meeting, whether it's, here or, in the mayor's office, whatever, just to have a conversation going forward about what we as the city can do. 'Cause
Okay.
I think we need to do more. I think I appreciate the fact that the, homeowners association is acknowledging, okay, this is part of it, we'll pay for it, but that, I think, again, my own personal belief is that we should be overseeing this project, but I think that's probably a conversation we need to have going forward.
Okay.
So thank you all for being here and for your input. I
Thank you,
truly
everybody.
Appreciate it. Yes.